What if I was a fly on the wall in your previous focus sessions and I watched exactly what you're doing when you say you're studying or when you say you're working? How embarrassed would you be? Would you be bouncing around from Instagram to Twitter to Reddit to Facebook when you know you should be working? Would your roommate randomly come barging into your room to show you an Instagram reel? Okay, pretty much everyone lives their life this way, but have you actually thought about what would happen if you just locked in and you just focused for your work sessions? How much more productive would you be if you stopped this scattered productivity focus type shit that you do all the time and actually focus for the few hours that you had to work for? You'd get done in a month what other people get done in a year. So let me show you how the scattered mind is the real enemy and how to develop deep work and how I did it personally when everything in my life was falling apart. You've probably heard the common narrative that most people don't work hard and people are lazy, but I wholeheartedly disagree. I think a lot of people work super hard. They work super long hours, but they don't really get much out of it. The way we actually get how much time someone has worked for is we multiply the time they spent working by the amount of focus which they had, how focused they were. But to tie this in, let me give you a few other examples. If we were to make a state, let's say we wanted to make a yard as big as possible, we could make it that one side is much bigger than the other, or the other side is much bigger than one, but we're going to make the biggest yard only when both of the sides are equally as big, right? The answer is, how do you make a big yard? Make both of the sides of it as big as possible, right? That's just a logical example. In maths, you can mathematically prove this, but the way you're going to actually get the biggest result out of this equation is by having both of the variables as big as possible, and in maths that's when they're equal. But to make this make a bit more sense and not be too mathematical about it, you can imagine a business who wants to earn as much revenue as possible. Now the way they earn revenue is they sell that product to people and they price that product at a certain cost. This is the product price, and this is the amount of people, the customers that they have. So logically, what would you want to do? You would want to increase the amount of customers, you would want to increase the price on the product to make sure revenue is as high as possible. So logically, I mean, yeah, sure, you could sell to one customer and you could make it incredibly pricey, you could make it millions of dollars, but you're not going to earn that much money because not many people can afford that type of money. Not many people will willingly splash out a few $1 million on just one thing, right? And on the other hand, you could target everyone. You could literally sell to like 1 billion people, if that's even possible, and you could make your product 1 cent. You still wouldn't earn that much money because both of the sides of the equation need to be high in order to actually get a good result. And it's the same exact thing with time and focus. People spend a lot of time and they focus on this side of the equation and, yeah bro, I worked for 14 hours today. And they don't take into account that you need to be focused when you're working, because this person who spends their time, working in 9 to 5, and they're from 9 to 5, they're working 8 hours. They spend 8 hours working and they spend it with about 15% focus. And I'm not over exaggerating here. The amount of focus that people have in these common jobs is absolutely abysmal. And they get around 1.2 actual hours of deep work in here, if we even qualify any of it as deep work, because it's probably just a lot of shallow work put together. But if you were to actually lock in, and if you told yourself that, okay, I understand the concepts now, I understand the concepts that we're about to talk in this video, you're going to lock in and you're going to tell yourself, okay, you know what, some things are still going to distract me, I'm not going to be entirely locked in, but I'm going to do as much as I possibly can. You're going to achieve 90% focus for just 3 hours, and that will already give you more than twice this amount. You will already work for 2.7 hours of deep work. If this hasn't sold you yet, I don't know what will. And the way I found this out wasn't easy, by the way. It wasn't on no fucking self-improvement forum. So before I graduated high school, of course, I had to do my final exams, and I was doing maths with the most emphasis because that was the one that mattered the most for me. I wanted to go to a computer science school. I applied to Bristol University, who sent me quite a hard offer actually, and it was really hard for me to get in with my knowledge. So I had to really lock in and focus in on this test. Now, the written part of the exam was on the 3rd of May, and I really focused, I studied a bunch, and I got okay results. It was nowhere near as good as it should have been, if we're being entirely honest. So what I needed to do, I needed to lock the fuck in this time for 12th of June. It was about 40 days later. I needed to ace this. I calculated my score and I was like, I need to get pretty much 100% on the verbal part of the exam or I'm not going to get in. And what ended up happening was that I studied.
Why? I studied, bro.
I started studying about 5 weeks late. All this time in May and even in the beginning of June, I told myself, I'm going to start. I started reading these things and it was so fucking boring. I couldn't get through it. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't do anything productive for the love of God. I spent hours looking over the text and just meandering over it and skimming through it and talking to a friend and getting distracted. None of it worked. I tried the Pomodoro technique. I tried making a Notion template. I tried all of these fucking bullshit hacks. None of them worked. So in about the final week leading up to the exam, these final days, what I did was something I haven't done before. And keep in mind, during this time, I just got rejected by my crush and my heart's broken and I'm fucking anxious as shit because this test is coming up and I still don't know anything about it. Yes, I have to ace it. And what I end up doing is I make myself a routine that even Ashton Hall would be proud of. I go to bed at about 10 p.m. I wake up at about 2 a.m. I study for about 3 hours. I go to bed back at 5 a.m. and I wake up at 9 a.m. This is actually a logical thing to do. It's called biphasic sleeping, and there's some evidence to provide that this is what our ancestors used to do. And I watched a video on this and I got quite interested in it. And I was like, hold on, I can't get myself to lock in for the love of God. I'm getting distracted all the time. My dopamine's fried. What can I do? How can I put myself in a position where I must enter deep work? There's no other way. And I came up with this option of entering a biphasic sleep pattern. And the reason this was so amazing is I had absolutely nothing to do. No one was online to play video games with. Nothing was open for me to go to. No events, no nothing. My family wasn't arguing in the background while I was trying to study. Nothing was happening. Nothing. I had nothing to do. I set out my papers onto my desk before I went to bed, and I woke up and that was the only thing that was staring at me. I ended up learning in this 1 week what people ended up learning in this time. Even in this time, because some people came up to me in fucking April and told me that they were already learning for the verbal exam. I learned in 1 week, which these geeks learned in like 2-3 months. I entered a state of 100% focus, but you don't have to worry. I'm not going to tell you on a new routine or sleep schedule. This is not a video about biphasic sleep. If you listen carefully for the next few minutes, you're going to learn how to enter this 100% deep work state without wrecking your sleep schedule. This is the reason that your life is where it is right now. You imagine attention to work in this way. You're 100% focused, you're locked in, you're at pretty much in a flow state, and then you get distracted. And you imagine this distraction to be pretty much nothing. You imagine this distraction to be, okay, I text my friend back. My mom comes in my room, I tell her that I'm not hungry yet. I go back to 100% focus, and yeah, I'm back in the game. This is nowhere near reality. There's a concept called attention residue, which Cal Newport talks about in his book, Deep Work. And it pretty much says that you lose about 15 minutes worth of time whenever you get distracted. Attention works a bit more like this. Every single time you're in a flow state, you didn't get there randomly. I'm going to tell you right now, enter a flow state. Right now, enter a state where you forget time really exists and you're just 100% locked in on studying. Get your book out and enter that state. You can't. It doesn't work like that. You have to really delve yourself into that, cut out all outside distractions, and want to do the thing. There's quite a lot of factors that go into it. So don't take this state for granted, as you probably do. Every single time you're distracted, you get ripped out of that state. And I watch everyone do this nowadays. Even modern workspaces are set up in a way which is destining you to fail. You know, there's these open workspaces where people can talk to each other. You always hear the chatter, the gossip, and everything that goes on. How do you expect to enter a flow state? And even if you do enter one, this is exactly what's going to happen to you. So what are we talking about here? And the worst thing of this isn't actually the fact that you have to work your way back up. It's actually the second, third, and fourth order consequences that come from this. When we get distracted, you know, we think of it as a binary thing, as okay, I'm distracted or I'm not distracted. This is how you've probably thought of it this far. You're either focused or you're not focused. This is not true. Let's say you get a text message. You haven't removed your phone off your desk while you're working, and you get a text message, a notification. You check it out. You know, maybe it's something urgent, guys. You check it out, and it's your friend inviting you to Amy's birthday party. So you're like, okay, I'll go. You respond. It's done in 2 minutes, realistically. You think this is happening, but actually this is happening. Or even worse. What ends up happening is 3 minutes later, you think back, I wonder what cake they'll have at Amy's party. Oh, maybe I should invite Josh. You know, Amy's kind of cool with Josh. You start thinking this shit, and then you're like, oh, I responded with, I'll go, with no emojis after that. They'll think I'm tryhard. I should have put some sort of emoji to think I'm like cool and shit. And you're going to start thinking the second, third, and fourth order consequences, and this won't be a straight way up. You'll go back down because you're now fucking thinking about the birthday party. You're not logged in on the Excel sheet in front of you. Now your journey is looking a bit more like this. Or you get distracted the third time, and then you're like, oh shit, I should message this person also because, you know, I'm already on my messaging app. And this is what happens. And then you start working your way up, but wait, it's your lunch break, you know, it's 12 o'clock already, and you still haven't entered the fucking flow state after you got distracted. So hopefully I've sold you right now on why this shit is what matters, why distractions are ruining your life. So how do we enter a state where we just don't get distracted anymore? If you can pay attention now, your life will change forever. There are two types of distractions, physical and mental distractions. We're going to be starting with physical. That's probably the easiest to understand. Imagine your phone being on your desk, as we mentioned. You get a random Instagram reel from your friends and you're wondering, oh, it must be so funny. Oh yeah, I deserve a break anyway. Bitch, you already told yourself you're going to work for 2 hours. You've worked for 20 minutes. Let's not kid ourselves here. If anything urgent happens, every phone nowadays has a double dial feature, which means if they dial you twice, it will ring. So even if you have it outside of your room, if something like urgent happens, if it's an emergency, as you tell yourself often, you're going to hear it. There is no excuse to have your phone in your surrounding while you're working. Next up is your home screen. Do you still have Riot Games or Diablo 5 on your home screen? Do you still have video games and just distracting shit that you don't want to do on your home screen? You know, what we're trying to do here is increase friction. Every single time you do something, It depends on how hard it is to do. For example, you've probably noticed when you have your water bottle on your desk while you're working, you're much more likely to drink water because it's in your visual field and you're like, oh, I just have to reach my arm and drink instead of get up, go to the kitchen, get a glass of water and whatnot. It's much easier. What we're trying to do is reduce friction for the activities that we don't want to do. Sorry, increase friction. The reason we want to do this is because if it's harder to do, you won't. Just like with getting the water, if it's so much further away, you'd rather like have your mouth a bit dry. You'd rather have a bit of dehydration, and although that's obviously not healthy, that's what we do, isn't it? All of this realistically is just increasing friction on the things we don't want to do. Moving your phone to a different room, getting these random apps that you don't want to use off of your home screen, and following on with the rest of the things, removing the things from your desk which might distract you. Do you have, I'm going to put my hand up, I'm guilty here, even stuff like this. I have this plushie that I got from my grandma's flat, and it doesn't really have anything to do here, and I might look at it and get a fleeting thought. Or I might, just pick it up because it's fluffy in it. I might do some random shit and it doesn't really have any job being here. And although these items are not like really items we can engage with, they are still harmful. And that brings us to our last point in the physical distractions category. Even pictures on the wall, as Cal Newport says in the book Deep Work, can be very, very destructive. Because if you just look at a picture on your wall of your grandma, you can start thinking about the family tree. That is how thoughts arise in us. We have external stimuli that we turn into thoughts. We get thoughts because of stuff that we take in through our senses. And if you have chatter around your room, if you have random pictures on your wall, you're just going to think of different stuff. Obviously, this is a bit extreme and you don't really have to take every wall off just to enter a flow state and a deep work session, but it does help. And this is why tryhards like Alex Hormozy work in a fucking closet where there's nothing around them, because this is how they can actually lock in. And finally, onto the 3 R's: responsibility, reminders, and replenishments. All of these are things that your mind will just come to you and tell you while you're working, and you want to get them out of the way as soon as possible. So for example, with responsibilities, there are things like you have to walk the dog, you have to do your chores, you have to do the dishes, you have to do these kind of stuff. You already know you have to do them, so just do them before your work block. This is why waking up at such an unholy time was useful for me, because I usually don't have to do anything during that time. I'm just asleep. I have no responsibilities at 3 a.m. So either put your work in a block where you have nothing to do, or do all of the things you have to do before your work block so you don't get interrupted. Your reminders are basically stuff that you've already set into motion that your body will tell you, hey, we need to do this thing. So for example, if I turn on the dishwasher and I know that it's going to expire in it's going to be done in 2 hours, I'm going to set an internal reminder. My body clock is going to be like, hey, you remember that thing that you did? Maybe you should check it out. Maybe you should unpack the dishwasher. If you eat dinner every single day at about 6 o'clock, your body is going to start reminding you at 6 o'clock that, hey, we're feeling hungry. That's also an internal reminder you've set for yourself after weeks of conditioning. Basically, anything that you're used to or your previous self has told you in the future that you should take care of, this is a reminder. You should take care of those as well before you start working. And finally, replenishments. Replenishments as in, how do you actually make sure that you're fully satiated? How do you make sure that you're hydrated? How do you make sure that you don't need to take a piss before you go working? Do all of these things, and realistically, all of these questions are about one single question. How will I get distracted? If you can have the humility to sit down and ask yourself this question honestly, how will I get distracted? You will beat everyone. You will get done in 1 month what others can't get done in a year. All of this and everything you need to know about deep work can be short-circuited by simply sitting down and having the humility to admit to yourself that, hey, I am actually quite pathetic if someone were to look at me the way I work. I am actually not that productive. I do get distracted a lot. How can we get in front of that? How can we make sure it doesn't happen? If you can prevent distractions, that is how you stay in this flow state. That's how you don't culminate all of the attention residue that we talked about. If you ask yourself these questions, you'll be like, hey, maybe my phone being on my desk isn't a good idea. Hey, maybe having League of Legends on my home screen isn't a good idea. Maybe I should optimize my flat in this kind of way. Maybe I should take a piss before I go to work. And finally, the final part, we've talked about elimination and getting things out of your environment, is addition. Maybe you need to add stuff to your environment, such as water, for example, because you're going to sense this internal cue because you haven't replenished your hydration in a while and you're going to be thirsty. So how about you have a water bottle on your desk, because that is not a distraction. That is something that adds to your life. And again, coming back to this question, how will I get distracted during this work session? If you answered this honestly, maybe you came to the conclusion, I'll get a dry throat, I'll get a bit thirsty, maybe I'll go out and, my roommate's there and I start chatting to him and, something happens. That is very plausible. So in this sense, adding a glass of water to your desk is definitely a plus. Now that you know what deep work is, just the absence of distractions, you have no excuse. If you can answer this question honestly, if I record my focus session, what would it look like? You can get to an answer really quickly. And if you answer to this, hey, maybe it wouldn't be exactly what I want it to be. Maybe it would be a bit pathetic. If you have the humility to admit that, then we can work on it. Then we can ask this question: how will I get distracted? How will I get distracted? How will I get distracted? As many times as you can. Because if you ask it one time, maybe you're like, yeah, maybe I'll go on my phone. Then you remove your phone from your environment. Then you ask it again, maybe I'll get a dry throat. Maybe I need to get a glass of water. Then you ask it again, okay, we've got a glass of water instead of your phone. Maybe my roommate will come in my room. Let me tell my roommate that I'm going to be working during this 2 hours, so they leave me alone. If you ask yourself this question enough amount of times, the next time you actually record yourself during a focus session, you will be proud of yourself and you will get done the same amount of work in 1 month as some people get in 1 year. By the way, I've opened up some slots in my calendar for people to work with me one-on-one, so if that's something that interests you, then click the link below to apply. Goodbye.